Other Voices SCV with Carole Lutness presents Bridging the Gap. We have been doing this series for a number of months now. Once a month we get together, and we are a group of people with a variety of outlooks and perspectives. Some are Republicans, some are Democrats, some are Black, some are white. There's no Black people right now on the panel. Some are young, some are old, Hispanic. We really seek to have a divergence of participation, and so we can discuss important issues that affect people in Santa Clarita. So welcome, and tonight's show, we're going to have a good show tonight.
This week, I just posted an opinion piece on critical race theory.
On what? Yeah, I just read it, Al.
And I included in it 3 definitions of it. One from Wikipedia was the first one. One discussion from Dr. Carole Swain.
Yeah.
And one from a book by Noel Ignatiev.
Yeah, I know.
And what I found was that, I got some people really excited, and everybody there that got excited had their own idea of what the critical race theory was. So if we
and when you say everybody, what was their ethnic and what kind of people were excited?
Well, the people that got excited were, my friend Joshua Heath, and another individual that posted a lot was Lee Murrell. They're both Caucasian, but they had their own ideas of what this was, and it's nowhere near what the other 3 people that I talked about thought and posted. So I can see that right now that is an issue that's gaining steam around the country, and to hear different people's idea about what it is and whether it's valuable or hateful or whatever.
I would love to use that as the topic of discussion this evening. Would that be okay for everybody?
Well, the only issue I have with it is, one, I haven't read those definitions. We're all white, mostly white males, and I don't think that this is the best sample of people to talk about critical race theory.
Well, it is true. We should have some African Americans there, but you know what? If we're really talking about critical race theory, the one thing that I spoke with the one gentleman that I talked with is, and I try to do that without getting them upset, was that if the only person that you believe can talk about critical race theory is someone that is African American, then does that mean the only person that we can talk about what's going on in the Asian community is someone that's Asian, or someone that we want to talk about the Middle East, someone that's Egyptian?
No, it's funny that you would mention that, because there too you get different points of view. A couple months ago, when there was a bunch of Asian hate, I actually contacted a woman, and she gave a talk, PowerPoint presentation to a psychotherapist group. And it was really, really interesting. And there was stuff that came up in there that I hadn't known about, and it really had a different angle than what you might hear from Black Lives Matter, from a Black person. So I think it'd be really cool to have a couple other race. Obviously we're so many races, you can't include everybody,
Well, we've lost our Black folks, and it looks as though we don't have Sebastian, who is our Hispanic representative, and I never did get an Asian or a Muslim.
What we need to do is advertise, because not only do we need people of different ethnicities, we need the ones that are extremely vocal and outgoing and interested in this issue. So, it's not just to talk about it. We need to get the right people there to talk about it also. I personally have the feeling that between being persecuted as a religious persecution and being persecuted as being Black, that you can't hide being Black.
Correct.
Right? But the persecution part is kind of the same. Now, somebody might disagree with me. That's fine. That just starts a debate and start dialogue going. So it's not like when I write something, and Carole knows this, it's not like when I write something every week, I expect everybody to agree with what I write. The best thing I can do is get people talking about what I write. That's what an opinion columnist does.
Let me
Maybe
jump.
that's,
Dave, you want to
Let
talk?
me jump in.
go.
I believe
Speak
that
louder, honey.
the conversation about critical race theory is a straw man that has been put up. Critical race theory is basically a conversation taking place at graduate school level. And what I think is it's a buzzword to frighten people so that they can talk about not teaching the histories of our country, which we don't teach. We don't teach that the 7th Cavalry at Wounded Knee went in and shot down unarmed old people, women, and children because they were Sioux. We don't teach about the lynching in Los Angeles in Chinatown that took place back in the 1890s, which wiped out
Or the Zoot
30
Suit
or 40
Riders.
people, or we don't teach about, we know about the Japanese Internment Act,
Internment.
but we don't know a lot know,
Well, that's-
and we don't
I
teach about
think if
Chinese
we-
exclusion legislation
Mhm.
or the
Exactly,
lynching of Chinese
exactly.
and Asians throughout the mostly the West, Western states. There is a lot of things that should be taught in school that are not taught in school, and they're trying to start to get some of that stuff in there. And this is a frightening word. Critical race theory is to frighten people so that they can prohibit teaching history to children.
but it's not the people that are trying to prohibit teaching children that are using that term. It's the other group. It's the group that believes that they want to teach something, but no one knows what it is.
But wait.
That's because there
wait,
is no
wait.
group except for some people operating at
This is an academic conceptual
at the
framework that is
postgraduate
handled
level,
on the,
talking about how this has affected our country. They're not talking about coming in
they're
with a
not
whole new
talking about
course
teaching
of
it at
teaching in
school level.
elementary
They're not
school.
talking about that
I don't
at all.
know. There's a
Yeah,
whole,
but see, isn't that the
Yeah,
point,
there's a
though?
whole
Isn't
big
that-
Fox thing on it, but
Wait. Go ahead. Duncan, what were you going to say?
I was gonna say, isn't that the point? You know, and Dave kind of said that it's not so much the discussion about critical race theory isn't so much about the actual critical race theory, which was this very academic thing. As I see it, the discussion now today about critical race theory is how it's been distorted and used in the media and what's going on with this whole fervor about critical race theory. So it's really about the fervor about critical race theory, much more than, I mean, none of these people who are upset about critical race theory know a damn thing about it. They haven't read it. I haven't read it. I'm not an authority on critical race theory, but I could be a part of a discussion about how it's been blown up and how it's being actually talked about in our society and in our culture, and how damaging is that. So again, I could not be an actual authority on the academic study of critical race theory as it was invented in the universities.
Well, I think the whole issue is whether it's black or white or red or yellow, whatever it is the other. The other is scary. And when you see, I mean, Dave always talks beautifully about this, honey. Can you talk about that?
we don't have a race problem in this country.
Go
We
ahead.
have a tribal problem in this country. Tribes are important. We are a social animal and we come together in groups and we call these groups tribes. Unfortunately, not everything about tribes is good. And one of the things about tribes is that seemingly, and I believe built into our DNA, is this bringing us together by pointing at something outside of the group that the whole group can attack. And I always said that George Floyd wasn't killed because he was Black. He was killed because there were a couple of people in what they perceived as their tribe who thought that because he was of another tribe, he was bad and he needed to be eliminated.
Reactions to that?
They do it
Any
to, they've
reactions
done it
to
to
that?
gays, they've done it to transgender, they've done it to they've done it.
Hispanics,
They've done it to
Chinese, any
Protestants
place,
and
any
Catholics.
other group, right?
Yeah. The only
Okay, so-
group they haven't done it enough to is
It's
lawyers.
a bit like it's a bit like the argument that sometimes, oh, I missed that. What did I miss?
Wait,
Duncan,
Duncan,
what?
you missed. Go
Duncan,
ahead,
talk.
Duncan. Go ahead, Duncan.
Oh, I missed the funny part. I want to hear it.
Oh,
Oh, the only thing the only group that hasn't been targeted sufficiently by tribalism is lawyers.
And clowns.
Oh,
Clowns,
who
evil
are
clowns.
you calling a clown? But if we
you
were
know what?
Chinese,
But you know what? This is a good topic because look at how many different perspectives we've already come along.
absolutely. And I think what you can do is just edit this so that we have a segment, don't you think? I mean, I think this is something people really want to talk about. Go ahead. Do you have another reaction?
Well, I do. I mean, this isn't my area of expertise, but it certainly comes up in literature from time to time that I read. But you know, when we're born, we gravitate to faces that are familiar, and if we see newer faces, there's some stranger anxiety. And then if we see faces that have really different features, whether it's skin color or eyes or hair, that's very, very different. I know my daughter freaked out when she was like 1.5 or 2 when we were in Coalinga at a Denny's and some farmer took off his baseball cap, and that, like, just taking the cap off created like immense distress. I don't know if she
And
thought
how
that,
old was she?
like 1.5 or 2 years old. It just was like it's on the head and then it's not on the head. She probably thought it was part of his anatomy or something. But you know, when you look at somebody who's different, has bigger, you know, wider nose or nostrils or something, it's just different.
Well, if we put ourselves, if we were Chinese and the other was the Uyghurs, it was a Muslim sect that was different. I mean, I don't think that our culture is any different than any other culture. They have their other and we have our other, and our others tend to be like you talked about the Irish. I'm half Irish, and my mother, who was English, whose ancestry was English, those lace curtain Irish, those ignorant, you know, I mean, they were so prejudiced against Irish when I was a kid, and yet she married an Irish Catholic, you know.
Oh, so you must have loved the part of the thing today where I talked about Irish.
Yeah, but remember,
Yeah, I
yes.
read, yes, exactly. I know that was good because it's exactly right. And the whole issue, you know, that whole discussion about the Irish and the blacks will come together and they'll form whatever group that was. I mean, that fantasy that was permeated during that time. I think that was very good. I mean, it's a good discussion. Al's column is always advocating. Where did you publish it besides sending it to me?
Well, it's on Facebook as Always Advocating Alan. And what I do is I also have an email list for people that don't like Facebook, and I email it out every week. And I see the same thing. I see if I start printing fluff material,
If you
or
start
things that
putting
people aren't,
what?
if I
Fluff.
do fluff stuff or things that people aren't interested in, well, then my number of hits go way down. And then if I do something people are interested in, then it go way up. So, and I don't do it just to try to react and get people interested, but I look at things that I think are going on around the city mostly, or around the country, and I try to offer an opinion about it. And what I saw in this particular case, I did Noel, what was his last name? Anyway, he had a book. He wrote a book about how the Irish became white. That was the title of his book. And
Well, there's a
so,
lot of prejudice when I was a kid. There's no
Right.
question the Irish were
Right.
not considered okay. The
absolutely, but
white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. That
Right.
was what was okay.
right. But when he starts doing this, he starts substituting race with ethnicity and with economic conditions, and you're not going to be able to take that to a grammar school kid and have him understand it.
But Al, I don't think you're understanding. It was never intended to be taught to
Peace,
children.
I,
Ever.
I agree with you. I agree with you that it should not, that it's not, and when we
There's
start
never
doing,
been an intention. It's a theoretical framework.
okay,
I'm watching right
I'm not
now.
arguing with you. I'm
Yeah.
not arguing with you.
Like,
I'm with you, okay?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
there are a
yeah.
lot of people that are afraid of it because of all of these different explanations of what it is, and they're all different. And the kind of things where you go in depth and talk about what happened to blacks or what happens to Irish or what happens to Chinese, or those are all big classes in a college environment setting. I agree. We should talk about that in junior high school.
You know, I at my 40th high school reunion, I sat with can't think of her name. Someone I went to elementary school with, a woman whose family was interned in Central California at Manzanar, Japanese girl, and then a Black girl whose family had come up from the South. You know, because in the 1960s there were a lot of Black families moving into West LA. And I said, you know, it's too bad we didn't have something to talk about where our families came from. Fortunately, my family got to America before the Holocaust. My wife's family, many of them were wiped out. But you know, had there been something, you don't have to talk about theory, you just have to talk about experience and extrapolate from those experiences to find out and be more sensitive to what, you know, I didn't really learn about you know,
But the
slavery.
question, I think, is sociologically,
Right.
in all groups, right now we're dealing with, particularly with can Black people find community and inclusion in our white culture? But that's true with everything. Are we able to construct a society where we are better able to remember the liberty and justice discussion? You know, liberty, it's I'm on my own and it's me against, you know, everybody else, and bootstrap, pick up by my bootstraps. And if you're, you know, if you don't make it, it's because you're defective. Or justice, which is which is what we're seeking. We want fairness and equality. And that is true throughout the world. Whichever other group is being discriminated against. And I do believe our culture has a lot of systemic racism built in, not only with Blacks, but every ethnic group, and with gays and lesbians and whatever. We have a system that is a zero-sum, hierarchical, authoritarian kind of system. We talk about the ideals of justice and equality, but we don't do it. We have to fight for it. I mean,
equality is equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. You have to understand that you can't make everybody outcome the same if you give them the ability to act on their own. But the whole thing is, I don't particularly agree with you, Carole. I think that we are far, far better off today than we were when I was born. I mean, I know what my parents told me about the 40s, and I know what we went through in the 50s and the 60s. I think we're better off today, and we'll be better off tomorrow.
Well, we may be better. We may be better off today, but we're very vulnerable. I mean, Germany was better off. The Serbs and Croats got along well. I have a cousin who's married a Serbian guy. His cousin was the first man killed when that whole thing blew up. So it's like it's just a couple steps away. And I think for many of us who were not Trump fans, that fear was lingering for those of us from Jewish families who knew how quickly that thing, well, it wasn't that quick. It was a couple years. Well, it was some years of Hitler and erosion, and then he was out.
It took 2 generations for that to happen. And then now, we can't blame Germans today, right? Because they're 2 generations away from when it happened.
Right.
So the big difference, though, is I'm sorry, Dave, you were going to say something.
I think that I believe in my heart, and I hope you will consider that the basis of the problem is basically biological.
I agree.
First of all, we evolved to survive, and that means competition. Second of all, we evolved to be afraid because being afraid is a way of staying safe in a dangerous world. Then thirdly, there are always those people who will use fear to raise themselves up. And these are the people like Joe McCarthy and Adolf Hitler and whoever that jerk was over in where was it? Nigeria, where they had
talk about Stalin. He was right in there.
Oh, he was yeah. Hitler killed 6 million. Stalin killed 20. Yeah. Okay.
That's a matter for debate, but yeah.
What would you say, Duncan?
That's a matter of debate. There's the numbers for Stalin are all over the place, but
all over the place, it was
a lot.
And the number, but
well, look at the peace-loving Cambodians and what happened to millions of people.
Pol Pot, yeah. Pol Pot in a Buddhist country, yeah.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things is that I've recently become a German citizen myself because of
Explain that. Tell the group.
There was even an article about it I think on CNN like a few days ago about how since after World War II, Germany said all the people who were stripped of their citizenship wrongfully, are allowed to return. But there wasn't a legal framework in place for that. So a lot of them were rejected, were denied citizenship. So a couple of years ago, or maybe 2-3 years ago, my nephew was studying our family history and learned about this, that Germany is actively trying to repatriate some of the descendants of the Jews who, were wrongfully stripped of their citizenship. And so I happened to be in that camp. And the interesting thing that I found was they have high-level government officials who are saying, it's not enough to say we're sorry. We have to have some kind of compensation. We have to actually actively make this right. And as you said, these are people who are generations removed from the actual Germans who conducted those atrocities. And so there's a huge difference here in this country, which makes me ashamed of my country, because we don't have people in government like that who are willing to say, no, I am not the one who scalped that young girl, or whatever. I am not the one who lynched this black boy, but it was us. We did it, and we're sorry, and we need to make this right somehow because it's still affecting us today. Germany has the fucking guts to do it.
In Germany,
excuse me,
those individuals that were harmed are still alive today. That's the difference. We're talking about something that happened one lifetime ago, not 5, 6, 7, 8 generations ago.
But the
And
the
I
understanding
refuse,
of that is
I
not,
personally refuse for anybody to tell me I had any part in it because my relatives weren't even here then.
we're Americans
my
now,
relatives.
and therefore
If we're part of a system,
yeah,
that
we're part of that system.
we
And
are
so
part
if we
of a
don't do
system,
anything to
and we have
correct the system,
benefited,
then we are now a part of continuing that system. It
and
doesn't
we
matter if we
benefit
got here
from that
citizenship
system.
yesterday.
That system
Absolutely.
of hierarchical racism started, and it gave the white man enormous amount of head start from everybody else. So I am responsible for what happened because I have benefited
But
from
also,
a very
yes,
a corrupt
But the
system.
point is, it doesn't really matter who was responsible. We know that this is a part of our nation's history, and we know at least as much about it as we do about what happened during World War II. There is ample information available about the atrocities that our government committed against Native people and other minorities. So it doesn't matter if your family was from the South or not. My family wasn't here either. While we were committing atrocities here, my family was having atrocities committed against them back there. But it doesn't matter because I'm here now, and we need to fix America now. This isn't about some esoteric conversation. This is happening today. This is affecting us today, and that's why it needs our attention.
And that's why this is a great subject for us to use.
This is a wonderful subject. I am so glad that you wrote that article.
And I'm not even going to mention the bad thing.
Okay, wait a second. One at a time. Go ahead, Dave.
And I'm not even going to mention all of the evil things that we're doing right now in Central America, perpetuating
in Central America, right?
Perpetuating
and have done
the
historically.
corrupt governments that we originally put in place to support Chiquita Banana.
Right. We are just as bad an
And we're still
imperialist
doing it.
power as Britain ever was.
Well, the
And
whole
we haven't let it go.
the whole fantasy that the white man in America had the right to impose manifest destiny in all of our hemisphere because we were white and we were not going to let the British or the French have any power over in our hemisphere.
Weren't the British and the French white also?
I can't hear you.
Well, the British
Weren't the
are.
British and the French white also?
The British are.
Yeah, about
So
the
it's not
white
because-
man.
it's not because-
no,
It's not
the white
because we were
man-
white. It's because we
Yeah,
had
she's
the
got stuck on
ability
the white
and the
part.
technical capability and the power to do it. It is a problem with individuals exerting an unreasonable power over others, not because of their color.
Well, it is because of their color, because we'll use any opportunity to form our tribes. Just like David said, it is a tribal thing, and racism and racial differences are one of the easiest ways to form tribes because it's just right there in front of you. It's very easy. It's very visual. There's a lot of tribalism even among genders. So whatever is easiest, we're going to gravitate. We're going to be tribal, and racism is one of the easiest ways to be tribal. But it's not necessary. We will find any reason to separate me from you so that I can do whatever the fuck I want to you. We're going to find that. It
But
just so happens that
if we're educated and we act like adults, then we can get past that. And that's,
Say it
That's-
again, Steve. I didn't hear what
No.
you
I said,
said.
if we're educated and we act
No.
like adults, right? Like, when I heard you
it's-
describe what Germany is doing, just the act of giving back is for the givers is an altruistic event, which sets the heart
Dave
at a
and
calm
I-
place.
It's not about being an adult. It's hard. It's hard. It's in the blood. It's in the bone.
It
You've got
is. So
danger, and a development of a child. And this is something I read several years ago, and this is cross species, not cross races, cross species. When a female becomes uh, uh, receptive to breeding biologically. She seeks out the different, actively seeks out someone who is genetically unsimilar to her, not at a conscious level even. And this is true of people, but it's true of other species. And as soon as she gets pregnant, she seeks out her own family.
So part of that is because the pheromones are at action, finding different immune systems, because if you have a variety of immune system for the mother and the father, the child will have a broader.
No, that's
broader. No,
evolution.
this has been researched. The child will have a broader chance of success.
Yeah, but that's not a conscious thought that goes through anybody.
No, it's not conscious at all. It's just it's something that happens automatically.
What I was saying, Dave.
What I was saying, Dave, is that I agree with you on the stranger danger thing, but through education and through making rational decisions as an adult, we can overcome some of that stuff.
Yes, but my point is, if you want to be that, and hopefully the only way we can survive on this planet is if we want to be that, then you've got to work at it every single day, every single
Exactly.
minute.
Well, I think we also have to consider the duality of humans. And most of you have heard my, please, Dave, may I please have the floor?
Sure.
All right, biologically, we share 99% of our genetic makeup with bonobos and 99% with chimpanzees. Chimpanzees are patriarchal, hierarchical, warlike, and their concept is sex is for procreation, very territorial, very aggressive, very competitive. The bonobo is matriarchal, democratic, and they may be walking down to a path and there's a banana, and three of them will have sex and share the banana afterwards. So they solve problems through sex. That is through pleasure, through that, make love, not war kind of thing. And that is a biological difference in us. We have that we have both of those elements in our genetic makeup, so that we have the God, the patriarchal God that's going to strike you down and smote you and do all, and we have the Gaia, the Mother Earth. And we just have that tension within us, and it permeates politically, sexually, economically. Are we liberty people, or are we justice people? Are we liberty?
I think ultimately what Steve said is right, and what David and Carole are saying is right too, that we are, we are biologically predisposed to some not great stuff. But now that we have the intelligence and we have the education, we know that, and it's on us now to surpass that. So it may not, we may not, are biologically be this wonderful species that we wish we were. We're not, right. But that doesn't mean we can't be.
Right, and it's not only race and nationhood, it's also, when the stress level gets too high, political groups. I mean, we've seen so much hate on Facebook, between Democrats and Republicans. I mean, where people are ready to, sometimes we fear that they're going to kill, Yep. So it's the other, it's going back to what Dave says, it's the other and how we perceive survival. Because once we have a stress response with adrenaline, then, all hands are on deck for what.
And there's also that fascinating, I know Carole loves the whole bonobo chimp thing. And the one thing that I probably, some of you have heard me talk about a lot. I love the studies. It's so fascinating. Some of these studies that have been done about the size of different people's amygdala, which is our fear center,
Right,
our
right.
fight or flight center. So that apparently now with MRI scans, you can predict with about 80% reliability whether somebody's more likely to be conservative or liberal based on the size of their amygdala, because generally conservative people have larger amygdalas. That's why fear works so well with conservative political campaigns.
Right.
It's not just the
race
size
theory, right?
Right. It's not just the size of the amygdala, it's also the neural pathways, because David Amadio is the guy who did the studies where there were 100 people who had their MRIs taken on the exit. He said, are you a Democrat or are you a Republican? And then he took all the Republican brains and did the math on them to come up with a prototype, in terms of where the energy is. And then also with Democrats and with Republicans, and you found different parts of the brain working, which I can elaborate on, but for time's sake, I won't. And we do think differently, but the truth is, it's not something that's really about Democrats or Republicans, because those didn't exist thousands of years ago. It's just about brain types that are needed for survival.
No, what's
we need to have a
fascinating
variety of ways of thinking.
Well, this is what's fascinating about it to me. It's that I'm a liberal. I've always been a liberal. I find fascination in different cultures, and I get excited when there's more cultures together. I was trepidatious about moving to Santa Clarita because it was a little too homogenous for me, a little too white Christian for me. So I kind of didn't want to really leave LA and come up here. I was in the San Fernando Valley. That was more comfortable for me. So so people are different. We have very deep-seated biological things that are driving us. So now that we know that, it's all of this stuff that we're fighting about has very, very deep roots. And so the only real way that we're going to overcome any of this is to use the logic part of our brain, the intelligent part of our brain, and not the deep down whatever lizard part of the brain.
Well, you've got the midbrain, which is the primitive child brain, fully developed at birth. And then you have the adult brain, which takes about 25 years to completely mature, which has got the logic and the impulse control and all the adult brain kinds of functions. But we're going to have to wrap up. Anyone have any final say?
Well, just one last thing to just add on to that. I'm sorry, Dave. Was that what's really great about that is that, well, we can't just be aware of this because of these different natures. People so often use their own perspective to judge all of life, which is incredibly wrong and incredibly, detrimental. So perhaps the most important thing is not just to have empathy, but to actually use empathy. The only way we're ever going to overcome so many of these issues is to actually be willing to see things from another perspective. And that is not necessarily innate. Sorry, David.
Correct.
Dave, did you want to finish up something?
Yes, I just wanted to say that duality is a mental trap, because things do not break down into A or B. The two things that I love, one was there are two kinds of people in the world. There are the kinds of people who think there are two kinds of people in the world, and the people who don't. And the other thing is, when we took our trip to Ireland and we went to Derry, and we saw the peace wall, and we had a local guide, and the peace wall was put up when they were trying to come to some kind of peace between the Protestants and the Catholics. Our guide was a Buddhist.
Al, any final says?
Well, I think this was a great discussion. I hope nobody leaves here unhappy or with anybody.
I was tickled. I'm so glad that Al, you have no idea how happy I am that you brought this up and you wrote your essay.
Good.
I just feel that this was really good, and
Yes.
it makes me feel like we should continue. Do you think?
Well, I
I
think you
think-
can use this as an example, and to try to generate some in.
Oh, sound dropped.
Your
and
sound
talk
dropped
to
out.
talk to the two
We
of you.
lost your
I learned
sound.
something.
We lost your sound. Let me wrap up for tonight. I hope you all enjoyed this, and we put these up on Facebook once a month. And if you like them, pass them on to your friends. And we'll see you next month. Bridging the Gap, Carole Lutness. And I just wanted to thank the panel members tonight. I had a wonderful time. I just thought it was a wonderful discussion, and I really am grateful to you, Al. I want to say goodbye.
Nice to meet you, Steve.
Nice
Bye.
to meet you too, Duncan.
Bye. Thank you.
See everyone
Now-
else.
Good to see everybody.
Hey, Al, can I give you an introduction? Let me do a quick introduction. Just
Okay.
my face.
Go ahead.
Can you do just my face, honey?
I think it normally when it renders, it does, but go ahead.
All right. Hello, this is Carole Lutness, and you are listening and watching Bridging the Gap Santa Clarita chapter.